Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another review, and today I'm taking a look at the high-grade Gyan Strom from the new Mobile Suit Gundam movie, Mobile Suit Gundam SEED Freedom. This line has been pretty spectacular so far, with a couple of issues when it comes to some colors, but besides that, pretty damn awesome. This video right here would not have been possible without those absolutely awesome people over at Articulation Japan, so if you do want some gunpla all of your own, I will throw a link down there in the description, but for now, let's get right on into it. So jumping back in time a little bit to the build, and inside this box we got the same amount of plastic we've been seeing across this line so far. So we've got some great color separation, a whole lot of parts, and some interesting looking weapons. Now I will mention we do have some stickers in here, which is definitely a bit of a down point, but I'll mention that later on. Overall, the build is exactly like we've seen so far with this particular line, so it is very impressive. This has the SEED action system, so all the joints are very nice. Sadly, we don't have any dropping mechanism in the waist, but overall it's just the grey joint section itself and the armor on the front, back and sides. Moving down to the legs, and this is very similar to what we would have seen with the Gaikotsu Menace, especially with the little verniers in the sides. These are not fully color accurate, but they still look great out of box, and this builds up in the classic kind of high grade way of armored part, joint section, then down to another armored part, so no full inner frame. The feet feature some articulation in them, so we will have a toe bend either up or down, and overall the armor attaches together really nicely, and so far we're getting a nice monotone, or should I say monochromatic, blue mobile suit. Now in the torso, this builds up with a lot more going on than I expected it to. The arms have a nice little kind of attachment to where they attach into the shoulder. The shoulder joints in the torso are quite interesting. I'm wondering right here, I never actually tried it, but it kind of looks like you could almost snip off these little tab sections here and get a little bit more articulation up and down at the arms, but it's kind of hard to tell. Interesting though. The build continues on the same, so a lot of nice exterior detail, but we do have something once again we've seen in this line, especially with the Black Knights, and that is an opening section inside of the chest. Once again, quite impressive, lots of layers, so a little more involved than something like what we would have seen in the past with the high-grade heavy arms. Next up, the arms are pretty much standard high-grade, that is just a few parts to put together for the shoulder sections. The arms themselves is the same armor, joint armor kind of routine, but we do have a nice little element in the wrists of this, which are for one of the onboard weapons known as the Slayer Whip. Now the head on this kit is definitely the wildest aspect. It builds up in a very interesting kind of way. It's got that classic Gyan shape, but the mono eye in this is done in a unique kind of way. It's a ball joint for where it attaches in. This can be quite difficult to actually attach in. I did end up dropping it, and even when you're just trying to attach it in normally, you can end up pushing the sticker off. And speaking of sticker, this kit has a whole lot of those, but I will talk about those when we're talking about the aesthetics. But either way, it builds up very nicely. The whole thing is a very interesting, intricate build, and another nice modern high grade. So jumping now into the aesthetics, and as far as Gundam SEED Freedom designs go, this is one of the most unique ones we've seen so far. Of course, this right here is carrying the torch of a very classic Gundam tradition, dating all the way back to the original Gundam series where we had the Gyan. We've seen various different versions of the Gyan as time has gone by, but this is the newest one and it is outright ridiculous. This is a little lighter in color than I'd actually expected it to be. Here's what it looks like with the backpack attached. I'm going to remove it so we can just take a look at the robot for now, but that brings me to something that is worth mentioning right away. This is it out of box with a little bit of panel lining, but I didn't do any kind of detailing up, or I didn't use really any of the color correcting stickers, and this really is the biggest issue when it does come to this line right here. We've been seeing problems like this since the Rising Freedom. This is not impressive. So yeah, this is the sheet of stickers and it is ridiculously bad. Now the good news here, even though it might seem like there is none, is that the vast majority of these are for using on the backpack. The robot itself thankfully has gone to some degree fairly unscathed, but it is all this kind of trim around the backpack that most of that blue came from. Or should I say most of that color in general. We've got a lot of red and blue trim around on the back. It's not really showing us much of the actual rear of the Gundam, but we do have some lighter colors on there as well that it is not showing. But if you do take a quick look at that wing right there, and then what we've got in the box, that is ridiculously plain. Now I'm going to be popping this off while we talk about the aesthetics of the robot itself, and for the most part this has gone unscathed and does look amazing, so let's talk about this first. overall, the Gyan Storm definitely inherits the Gyan classic features. We've got points, curves, the overall kind of night aesthetic, but this time around it's in a pure white with a little bit of light blue and some, what can I say, darker light blue? All topped off with a little bit of actual, well, good old blue. This leads to a really royal, almost monochromatic looking mobile suit with a little splash of red in the visor. It does look ridiculously cool and is also ridiculously unique. The build on this is the same as we've seen with the line so far. It's easy to put together, but it is very nice, has that SEED action build, and overall, once again, extremely impressive. So now throwing it down side by side with the art, when it comes to the mobile suit itself, all the colors, all of the detail is all there, besides a little bit of an emblem up on the shoulder. So Bandai have definitely nailed this without a single doubt. Of course, when I get that backpack slapped back on a little bit like this right here, you can see that this is definitely where it suffers and where most of the color issues are. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. When it comes to the details, this is very, very nicely color separated, especially in the face. We've got that red little section. The eye in there is a sticker. I'll also mention the top of the head is incredibly easy to knock off by accident. So we've got a sticker on that little eyepiece, which is tiny. That was the hardest part to attach into this particular mobile suit. It flicked off on me and it went on the floor and I couldn't tell it from all the other knobs. So we've got some nice color separation in the chest. Cockpit hatch down in the skirting armors, everything does look incredibly nice. The panel lines on this, there's not a crazy amount of them, but that perfect kind of pinstripe panel line that just feels so incredibly easy. There is some stickers for using on these little guys right here, so that's not the color they're meant to be out of box, but overall, it does look quite cool. This little booster right here again, I will mention I didn't panel line that because it's going to get blocked by the other backpack, but that could be a little bit more detailed. But besides that, from the front, you've got all the detail you could need. Also, this kit definitely benefits from the light colors when it comes to the nubs and nub marks and mold lines, because it's really hard to kind of see them on these light colors. There are the odd nub mark here and there. Now, I just double snipped this the normal kind of way, didn't do any cleanup, so that really shows just how good the nub placement is. The seam lines, like Bandai tends to do a lot lately, are adopted into the design. The only ones that kind of aren't are these ones right here, which are a little bit noticeable. No matter how much I try to push this together, there is a little bit of a line there, but again, not the worst. And I'm also not seeing any killer mold lines on it either. So definitely a very nice, tidy mobile suit. When it comes to the actual stickers for color inaccuracies on the mobile suit, the only thing is, like I mentioned, this little thruster right here. What you need to use on that is number 5, which is these little gray ones right here. So these are just to kind of gray up the top of the vernier, but besides that, not too bad at all. So now jumping into the full 360 spin so you can see every angle of the Gyan Storm for yourself. And once again, this is a really cool night-like monochromatic mobile suit. The nice little splash of red inside of the head looks great. I will mention the sticker on that little mono eye could look a little bit better. Be better off painting that with a nice reflective pink. But overall, the color separation is incredibly nice. The panel lines are great. The sculpt is great. The build was very, very, very nice in the usual SEED Freedom kind of way. And overall, definitely impressive. A unique mobile suit without a single doubt. So now jumping into a size comparison, and there it is beside the high-grade Oryx 78-2, a standard-size Gundam, so you can see the Gyan Storm is quite a big ol' mobile suit. Beside a couple of mobile suits from the same movie, there is the Rising Freedom, the Immortal Justice Gundam, Black Knight Shiva, Gelgoog Menace, Real Grade Force Impulse Spec 2, and besides some other high-grade Gundams, there's the high-grade Gundam Barbatos, high-grade Gundam Exia, high-grade G-Self, and the high-grade Penelope. So now jumping into the accessories, and here's everything that comes with the Gyan Storm, not including the backpack, so there is a lot in here. What we get is that typical Gyan Saber. This time it's the Fero Sakare Beam Saber. Next up we've got the Falx G7 Beam Axe. A stored version of that, a big old self-propelled shield, beam rifle, 4 hands in total, one of which is attached onto the Slayer Whip, and finally we do have some rotary machine guns for inside of the chest. So first up in here, we've got the hands. We've got a grand total of 4. We've got a pair of standard block Gundam holding hands. These have been on it the whole time throughout the review so far. And then we've got two alternate right hands. The first one has an extended holding angle, probably for holding onto the weapons for stabbing poses. And we do have this other one right here, which is holding onto the Slayer whip. So it does come with that whip attached into the hand. Attaching these hands on is super simple. It's just ball joints into a socket as it usually is. They hold on very, very nicely, and they are nicely sculpted with a little bit of a raised greeble section towards the index finger. So the most interesting hand in here is definitely the one that's attached onto the Slayer whip. In order to attach this, there's a very nice little simple gimmick to the display part in the wrist that's actually housing the stored Slayer whip. Basically, there is a little bit of a notch in the back of this so you can poke it forward. That moves it out a little bit from the wrist so you can actually grab onto it and pull it out. Then you just attach on the hand with the Slayer whip, and I actually thought this would attach into the hole. It doesn't. It's actually a little too big for the hole that's in the wrist. It just kind of, you pose it up against it just like so. This works absolutely perfectly and it does look fantastic, but it is a little interesting that it doesn't plug in. Next up, getting this into a little bit of a pose, and the stand I'll be using today is the same stand I always use, which is the Simple Stand by Good Smile Company. This one right here being the hexagonal version. The base adapter in this is just your standard little hole. Well, it's not really standard because it is square instead of circular. And getting this kit into a pose is just as easy and as awesome as you'd expect with a SEED Freedom kit, because it's got that SEED action system of joints which all work seamlessly and perfectly. And that's what it looks like in a bit of a pose, whipping away with that MAM767E Slayer whip. Next up in here, we've got that beam saber, which is that typical kind of Gyan fencing saber kind of vibe. We do have an injection gold handle right here. Of course, injection gold isn't the nicest looking, but it's not too bad here. And we do have one of those standard chubby beams. Attaching it into the hand is simple. It's the usual way of just sliding it into a standard holding hand, just like so, and that is what it looks like attached. Once again, the injection gold doesn't look the greatest, but overall it still does what it needs to do, and it's got that classic Gyan feel through and through. There it is in a little bit of a pose with this weapon. It can be held in either the left or the right hand. I assume it can be held in the extended right hand as well. When I attach it, I'll find out, but otherwise, looking good so far. When it's not in use and you want to store it, pop it out of the hand as usual, pop the beam out like so, and it can be stored on the left hand side skirting armor, just like so, and it holds on pretty good. So the next piece of equipment we have in here is another melee close quarters weapon, which is the beam axe. Now, this is the fully extended beam on version, and we do have one moving little segment down here, which puts out this tiny little blade on the end. Getting the beam axe attached is the sandwich style kind of way. You can use the standard hands or the extended grip. I'm going with the extended grip here. If you pop off the back of the hand, you can pop it into the hand just like so. And it is interesting to note that it does look a little different on the back here. The fingers are split in a different kind of way than usual, and the attachment is actually coming through from the rear guard of the hand. I've never seen a hand quite like this before. After that, then you can just pop it on, get your Gyan Storm into a pose. It poses up well. This holds on very, very nicely. And then this right here is what we get. Again, another nice weapon. The shine effects here are mildly vigorous, so they catch the light extremely nicely, and overall, an extremely nice weapon. So when it does come to actually storing this does involve a little bit of a parts formation, including this little piece right here. Just pop the weapon out of the hand, remove the beam effects, steal these little white sections from either side, as well as this little bottom piece right here with the blade. Whoa, easier said than done, what the hell? And when you manage to get that little piece off, you attach all the parts that you just removed onto this smaller stored section just like so. This looks incredibly neat and incredibly cool, and it attaches around back onto the rear skirting just like this and holds on perfectly and looks very, very nice, adding another nice little splash of red to the mobile suit. Next up in here is the beam rifle, and this is incredibly similar, if not exactly the same as what we saw with the Gelgoog Menace. We've got a moving handle up front, and we do have one of these little adapter sections for attaching it onto the mobile suit. This can be removed and pulled out just like so. It can be attached onto the side or the rear aspect, but when you are actually attaching the rifle into the hands, it just attaches in sandwich style. This, of course, is the ham, both sides of the hand being the bread, and it attaches in ball joint style. Super simple, looking cool, and overall a very, very nice beam rifle. This right here is what it looks like when it is in a pose. Next up in here, we've got the shield, which has that definite throwback to the original Gyan shield. It has that Gyan flare in bucket loads. Now, I will mention the gold on this could look a little bit better. It is the injection gold, so if you sprayed that up, it would look a lot more premium. Same goes for all the colors, of course, but the gold definitely suffers the most. It's got a little bit of folding in here, a little bit, which doesn't look so great. Around back, we do have the gold handle right here, which is unique looking to say the least. And there is two ways to attach this. There is a tab and there is a handle. And even with the handle, there's two ways to do that. First off, attaching it with the tab, it just attaches into the side of the arm like this. And this is into the side of the arm, not the back, and it has no motion to it either. So this does mean it does conflict ever so slightly with the shoulders a little bit. Not a whole lot really, and you do get a lot of articulation out of it. It's compact in tight to the body and stored very well. The other option then in here is to attach it into the hand. Now there is two ways. That is attaching it pretty much straight out from the body, like in a kind of punching motion, and the other way then is into the side of the hand, kind of outwards towards the outside of the body. But you know, this handle does actually hinge, so you're just kind of choosing how far out from the arm it is, in close to the arm or out a little bit further. Popping it in a little bit close to the arm is a little bit difficult because the angle you have to attach the back of the hand on, but both ways work very well, and this looks cool, and the fact that you can actually pivot it out in front and back up to the body is very, very nice. Even attaching these cool effect parts on is super simple, even when it is in a pose, because the way they attach on is extremely, extremely clever. They just attach them from the back into big holes, overlap with each other perfectly, and this is what it looks like with that beam going crazy out the edge of the shield, and this looks like it could be thrown around and used like a big spinning blade. What a glorious shield. While getting it unequipped here, I realized I forgot to show how to store the beam rifle right here. It's very similar to what we would have seen with the Gelgoog Menace, and I think it answers a question I had from that review. If I'm not mistaken, with the Gelgoog, we use this slot here to store it, but with this suit right here, we're going to be using this one because it hangs off of the side skirting armor. So that little bit just attaches in like so, and then just attaches into that little bit of a slot in the side skirt just like so, and that is where it stores. So the last piece of equipment we have in here are these two cylinder-shaped items right here. So these are for replicating the Tridenti triple barrel rotary beam machine guns in the Gyan Storm's chest. In order to do this, you just pop open these nice sections inside the chest. These are double layered, so there is nice grey plastic on the inside to give them some heft. You just pop in the rotaries just like so, and this is what they look like. It's got that kind of heavy arms flair, but with an extra third dimension. These look so, so cool. So finally now onto the articulation, and so far I've found it great besides one thing, which is the neck. Again, I will get to that when I get to that, but for now we're going to try and get it into the usual pose. So busting it into the usual pose, and there's a couple of issues here that I did notice. First off, I did lose some of the front skirting armor. I think this is one of those ones you cut them in half off the runner, so it doesn't, you know, you can leave them together so they'll be more structurally sound, but overall it's not as good at posing as I thought it would be. The action frame, or the SEED action frame, is there, but it does feel a little bit on the limited side in some regards. It is quite solid besides a couple of aspects though, and overall you will get some good poses, and I find it a little bit better in the air than it is on the ground. So going through everything one by one, and the neck joint is nice in this. You got your giggity goo and everything else, but it's so hard to kind of pose for the one main reason. You tried to grab onto this, but this is barely held on at all. Mainly so you can probably remove it to get to the mono eye in there, but it's just so awkward that it's hard to get anything really out of it, and posing it is a little bit of a pain in the butt. It is good, but that's annoying. And speaking of a pain in the butt, that mono eye in there can look around, but I am not going to do anything with it. First off, the first thing that will happen is the sticker will come off. The second thing is it's so stiff that it's more likely to actually pop out than it is to actually move around. And this thing is no bigger than your standard Gundam nub. So I lost it once, not losing it again. The shoulder joint in here is incredibly pretty, but it's just a standard joint. That little thing in there doesn't actually, well, does move around ever so slightly, but not a whole lot. Moving the arm to the front, you get that much. There it is, forward and back. We've also got the full 360 spin too. The shoulder is independent to the arm, so that is nice. There is the arm all the way up, not too bad. We've got that full rotation at the upper arm, a double bend right there, which is absolute perfection, and a standard ball joint for the wrist. When it comes to the ab crunch, it's incredible to the back, just like so. Actually, I might have it at a weird angle. So there it is to the back, and then there it is to the front. So that isn't too bad. There's the head gone again. There is the side to side, so definitely not bad at all. Front skirting is on a regular ball joint. Side skirting also on a ball joint, but it's good and secure and a lot of range of motion. The butt flap back here is a paralyzed classic butt flap, doesn't do anything. And when it comes to the kicks, there it is all the way up to the front, so good. blocked out to the back as you would expect, and moving this out of the way, you get a decent bit outwards, but not a crazy amount. Full spin at the upper leg. There is that full knee bend, so a double knee bend, not too bad. It is big and bulky. And when it comes to the ankle, throwing it on the ground, it doesn't move to the back at all because of all of this armor. Again, it's not really a mobile suit from the ground. There it is all the way to the front, so that is impressive because we do have a little bit of a moving toe with a bit of an upwards angle to it. There's it all the way down. And finally, there is the side, 2 side pivots, so not too bad. The backpack might look a little bit on the plain side, but the movement is quite good. First off, we do have some flappy action right here. These can move up and down here as well, which is nice. These thrusters don't really make much sense because it's kind of blocked. Maybe it switches from using both to only using the one when it's like that. And there is that rotation there as well. So overall, it is quite expressive wing-wise and nice to move around. So there we go. Once again, there is that pose again. Some parts may pop off on this, but not really all that bad. Posing isn't the greatest, especially on the ground, but up in the air, it is quite good and a lot of fun to pose with its equipment. But yeah, that right there is it for the review. This right here is a gold tier kit to me. It doesn't really hit the same level of awesomeness the previous SEED Freedom kits have hit. Even though it is a very good kit, it does have some bad aspects that cannot be ignored. Of course, it is lacking a lot of color separation like we saw on the Rising Freedom. It does have a couple of loose parts, especially up on the head that can get really annoying, and posing the head is quite annoying too. Visually though, it is very nice. The color scheme is nice, plain, and unique in a nice blue monochrome. When it comes to the equipment in here, it is very nice. You get a whole ton of weapons, and they're definitely the best aspect about this. I'm especially digging that big beam axe and that shield with its beam effects that spin all around it. Lastly then, when it does come to the articulation, it's incredibly good, by the way. By regular gunpla standards, it's incredibly good, but by modern gunpla standards, it is a little bit subpar. So yeah, gold tier, very good. Not necessarily as good as the rest of the range, but still fits in very well. If you want one of your own, link is down there in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more gunpla reviews, and I'll see you next time. I can't end this video right here without the usual thanks, saying thank you so much for watching. This video and this channel would not be possible without each and every single one of you, including those of you who support me over on the channel memberships and on Patreon, including Abraxas, Caleb Engelhart, Go Little Rockstar, Joe, Org59061, Shadow Wolf 179, 10 Soldier YT, and Van Fawn.